StopRex.org. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. We are back here live in studio, back at it, talking about the things that affect us here in the Borderland and beyond, but a lot of locusts happening on our area here today, so for all those you wishing me well on the travels here. We did make it back, though. It was a little bit harrowing. All that windy weather we're experiencing right here in this region is, well, let's call it the nicest one that I've encountered today, coming out of Tucson a little bit earlier today as we were on our visit to our sister stations over there. Encountered wind, rain, snow, sleet, not quite hail, but then also deadly tumbleweeds. I now know what it feels like to be one of the cars in those Game of Froggers, except the frogs in this case are by the thousands and all have a death wish. So yeah, just to make it here, we're in the studio, more or less safe. Just hope we didn't like puncture a radiator coil or anything, but good enough. We made it here and we got a lot to talk about, even if there's, well, let's call it just one major issue: border security and immigration. Not at all an infrequent topic for our discussions here. Definitely a lot of focus on that today, and a lot of eyes on our region specifically, as we have had quite the developments over the weekend here. Like I've got that mild paranoia sometimes that huge things happen like right after we go off air, and so I guess you could kind of read that for the weekend. But of course, as we're starting off the week, we'll definitely be delving into that here. A lot of response coming from state, local, and national officials and elected officials, law enforcement, nonprofit communities about what is going on there, as we have Ida Beza-Gardner chiming in over there. Hello to you as well with the hand wave. And Flaco Jimenez saying, left Tombstone around noon today and it was snowing pretty good. Yeah, we left a bit somewhere around 10:30 from Tucson proper. And yeah, the amount of snow on there, just okay, if you want to slow down whenever you're driving in inclement conditions on the road, go ahead, do that thing, but don't do it right behind an 18-wheeler because A, they can't see you, or more accurately, don't do it right next to an 18-wheeler. And that nice convenient blind spot where we're all getting the snow and spray up in our windshield so we can see less, they can't see you. Just one individual that I hope make it to the way safely, but I hope they stub their toe every other minute for the rest of their life here. In any case, yeah, I hope everyone's staying safe out there on the roads, even if we got some blustery conditions more around here. But more than just blowing into town, well, let's just a couple of the headlines, including from those over at our news partners at KFOX 14, that we're looking at potential of this being described by some as caravans, some as large groups here, and Flucky Menace saying as a truck driver, thank you for saying that. Absolutely, because it's dumb to not be just like get either be well behind or well past a truck. Don't just hover there and be whatever the thought process was. Eric von Holstein Rathlow, I hope everyone had a blessed weekend with prayer hands and peace as well. Appreciate that here. And Louis Pinato referencing, yeah, probably one of our major conversations today here. Him saying TV showing thousands crossing to El Paso at this moment. God help us. I do think we're going to need some help. The concrete numbers so far that at least 1,500, or maybe at least at one point, have now crossed into El Paso, and the actual amount of reporting coming out of this spans, the New York Times, local reporting considerations, including El Paso Matters, our news partners, of course, KFOX 14, El Paso Inc., and, well, even at the top of the hour news update that came right there about one of the largest in recorded history for the U.S.-Mexico border. So, like I said, a lot of eyes on El Paso. One of the top stories from El Paso Inc. this week, showing some of that reporting from from the New York Times, rather, about what has been going on. Literal encampments, small fires being lit by people waiting around them on technically the U.S. side of the border, but inside of the corridor of the border fence that exists in that area that looks very much like the area down. That gets a little bit nebulous there, but one of those fording areas that consistently has been used has, of course, been not too far from UTEP and the spur 1966 in that area where there are often, the low water fording opportunities, those kind of things, and where there are notably gaps in the fence. There has been more building around for those of a certain age, myself included. I remember the La Hacienda restaurant or the building that still exists there at Hart's Mill, kind of in that area where there wasn't previously as much construction or physical barriers. And there are still some inlets, access routes, those kind of things. I mean, you want to be able to get to the other side of the border wall if you need to. And Eric von Holstein-Rathel actually mentioning one other thing, because, that's going to be our major focus today, but also more updates coming up about that fire in downtown El Paso. Even further from our news partners there at KFOX 14, dumpster fire spreads to building, destroys shoe store in downtown El Paso. Still was knocked down in the afternoon, so is out as of this morning, but happened at the J&J Shoes warehouse on the 300 block of South El Paso Street near Holland's retail store, saying that it started with a dumpster fire and then spread to the rest of it. Building and other nearby ones were evacuated, and the massive fire burned until 2 p.m. Took about 50 firefighters in order to do that. It is now under investigation. The second fire was sparked across the street, but was extinguished quickly. So not too clear on what the amount of damage will be, but investigation going on. I know that there are some historic buildings in the area, at least dating some of them back until the 1800s, late 1800s, in some of those cases, including some of the oldest buildings in El Paso, by my understanding. So definitely be very interested to know what the outcome will be for the damage to and preservation ability for any of those here. And a couple of other commentary coming in, including Austin Redfern. Good afternoon to you as well. Ion Grimm, John Hertz. I missed someone there. John Browson, if I didn't already say that. So, a lot of conversation we'll be having on some of those issues and a lot of the related issues. Let's start local, and we'll kind of go more national as part of this. Again, a lot of response coming in and a lot of focus on our region because of the border security situation. Reports of those caravans, but it might not even be one that has been on the way here. Some very interesting insight, particularly from some of the national reporting on the logistics coming into this situation, both what the resources are on this side and what the circumstances have been on the south of the border situation. So, there's and RJ putting out here, tonight should be a blast for illegal aliens. Pray for them. It's getting colder as I type. There's been more than a bit of a reporting on people taking that into consideration, but with resources as strained as they are, there may not be within particularly the nonprofit community or particularly governmental institutions the ability to house what we are talking about here. So as we are looking at that weather, don't know if we'll end up with that snow, sleet, or rain in our area immediately as of over the weekend, but with that wintry weather, definitely temperatures definitely expected to plummet. It is not going to be probably a good overnight at all. And Flaccimento's also saying a friend of mine posted a picture he took while at a stoplight and the smoke was very thick, referring to the downtown area. So a lot of conversation, a lot of stuff. We're back at it, back in the studio and talking about all the things, even if we're going to be focusing on a couple affecting us here in the Borderland today. So stay tuned. Got to take that first break of this hour right now, but don't worry. You're locked in for 2 hours or the following remainder of the 2 hours here on the program, as we're going to talk about as much as we can squeeze into it, the things affecting us here in the Borderland. So, yes, back from the refreshing-ish and now pretty fondly looked back upon as a simpler time kind of circumstance over the weekend. But again, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot more to discuss here. Some comments we'll get to as well. Phone lines a little bit later as we usually do. But in any case, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Slowing on your El Paso freeways, I-10 eastbound Trans Mountain to the Patriot, 5-minute delays. On Memorial Highway southbound between Iron Medics down to Edgemere, it's a 5-minute delay. Montana Avenue eastbound from the Gateway out to Joe Battle, 5-minute backups. And Global Reach half-hour delays from the Spur down to Montana Avenue. And a blowing dust advisory till 7 o'clock tonight in El Paso. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by The Truth with Lisa Booth podcast.
So many athletes in the NBA purport to care about human rights abuses, but they stand silent against China. We'll talk to one man who has taken on China and what it's cost him. Listen to The Truth with Lisa Booth every Monday and Thursday, but you can listen throughout the week on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Most of the time, traffic is pretty good. But there are times when traffic can be pretty bad. No, I mean like really bad. Almost, but more like an asteroid's gonna hit the city and everyone's trying to get out of town at once and nobody's car is moving and people are running down the highway clutching their kids and whatever belongings they can grab. Yep, now you got it. It's times like these you need your severe traffic station. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM.
Help the planet with a tip from iHeartRadio Earth. Water heating can account for up to 25% of the energy consumed in your home. Save money and energy and improve the comfort of your home by turning down the temperature of your water heater from 140 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It can save you up to 22% on your energy bill annually. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living, or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
Getting a news feed on your phone while driving
makes driving more difficult.
This is dangerous.
Getting a news feed without a computer or mobile device?
It would be impossible.
Unless, of course, you get your live news feeds at the top and bottom of the hour.
It's easy.
Traffic and weather all day.
It's as simple as that.
Trending stories tend to change.
Every minute of every day.
Twice an hour, we'll feed your curiosity.
Stay informed.
Shouldn't we listen?
They're hungry.
News Radio, 690 KTSM.
My name is Sophie.
Sasha.
Robert. Ron. And I'm alive thanks to my nurse practitioner.
My nurse practitioner saved me from a lifelong heart condition.
She prescribed the right medication.
My NP diagnosed my multi-organ failure.
My NP listens.
She saved my life.
Twice.
And I will always be grateful.
To learn why millions of people choose NPs, visit us at wechoosenps.org.
Paid for by AANP.
The station you love? It's on the free iHeartRadio app. The artists you love? They're on the free iHeartRadio app too. The podcasts everyone's talking about? You guessed it, they're all here. Download the free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
iHeartRadio! There are things that go together that make mornings better. Coffee and cream, bacon and eggs, pancakes and syrup.
Let's take a look at traffic and weather together.
Traffic and weather. Yeah. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio. Updates all day long.
General things like that help me get through my day.
Before you head out, get together with our traffic and weather. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM.
At EasyCater, food for work is our thing. Maybe that's why we get orders from 93% of Fortune 500 companies. So what's up with the other 7%?
Food is late again.
You should have ordered through EasyCater. Professionally delivered right on time.
EasyCater, huh? Have a pen?
No, I don't have a pen. Does anyone have a pen?
Nah, I'll remember.
Why don't all companies order through EasyCater? Who knows? Order 24/7 from over 95,000 restaurants on EasyCater.com. EasyCater, food for work. That's our thing.
Veterans, are you planning to file a VA disability claim? Get ready for a better way to file. The Decision Ready Claim Program gets you a decision within 30 days after it's submitted. That's just 30 days for the benefits and services you've earned. Talk to your accredited representative or go to www.benefits.va.gov/DRC to learn more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up at these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, more or less the main one, where a lot of comments coming in right now, including Louis Pinato, Eric Von Holstein Rathlow, Robbie Flores, wave there as well, Ion Graham, John Hertz, Flaco Jimenez, RJ, Austin Redfern. Yeah, drop those likes and reacts. Let's go with that here. James Holmes, Ion Graham, Ted Kors, Ida Beza Gardner, Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, and Flaco Jimenez. Glad everyone out on the streets and the roads and traveling around here, getting here safely as well, because a little bit harrowing, particularly some points slightly to the west of us. Yeah, southern New Mexico, southern Tucson, southern Arizona, those kind of places that I was definitely having a lot of fun / not at all on the roads here. Literally, we ended up, unfortunately, hitting a tumbleweed that almost obscured our windscreen. So even if it's just, you think wind, I mean, sure, we got dust around here, and that's not, it can be bad, but not too bad. But yeah, again, evil reverse Frogger is the only way I can think to do that. So stay safe out there anywhere you're hearing this and however you are. And if you want to chime in safely, again, we got those comments going on and phone calls a little bit later, as we usually do. So whatever works for you, that's the right place for you to be. And just, again, keep it safe out there, as we got a lot to talk about today. But again, a lot of focus, not even just in our area, but coming from around the state and around the world on our situation here. One particular point that was made that I wanted to, not exactly call out, but use it as jumping off point here, is John Hurt saying, who cares what the situation is south of the border? It's not America's problem. And I'm just going to say that might be, as much as they see a company like, we don't have to worry about them, that understanding, particularly in some of the news updates coming from our news partners there at KFOX 14, about how, well, frankly, part of this is being orchestrated, for lack of a better term, from official Mexico policy, government of Mexico policy, would be, well, ignorant at best, because not understanding what's going on there is going to leave us continuing to potentially be blindsided by this, including some of the official policies, again, government of Mexico and even local officials putting into place to, well, it almost seems like a return to form in certain ways about keep them moving, keep them on through. Some of the other things is that, okay, let's get into some of the brass tacks about the situation we are looking at right now. About 1,000 to 1,500, there are a few different estimates going on with that, including from our news partners there at KFOX 14, that there were actually about 20 buses arriving in Ciudad Juarez Sunday, as estimated about in that group about 700, and then directed towards the U.S.-Mexico border by Mexican authorities. And there's also even a little bit more that goes into it, as we have Glenn Stewart chiming in with us. Happy Monday. Happy Monday to you as well. A lot to get into here today, so thanks for buckling up for the ride. As we also have Richard Janicek chiming in there about potential for others bringing people into their roof. There are actually some stories about that going on here, including from El Paso Inc., one of their big stories on top of their website today, specifically quoting the reporting from the New York Times about some who have done so, as well as others from specifically El Paso Matters, again, them quoting their article titled, Caravan of up to 1,500 migrants headed to border stopped in Chihuahua, as one of the subsidiary stories. So there's a lot more going on here, as then more than 1,500 is their other article title. More than 1,500 migrants weighed across the Rio Grande into El Paso Sunday night. And by many accounts, a lot of the processing was still going on well into today of that particular group and releases. So some of the information that is also coming out about this, including the points of origin that Nicaragua is one of the majorly pointed to. Of course, none of this is ever, completely homogenous or monolithic in any way, but that does present particular problems as well. The government of Mexico, among other things, has made it clear that its policy is not to accept those from anywhere besides right next door. I don't even think Belize is a part of it, but like Costa Rica and El Salvador start getting further south, they start not allowing them to be immediately just pushed back. Title 42, if you want to use a phrase that is also in question right now. And so, therefore, it doesn't really apply to them at this point in time. We got a similar-ish situation that was going on when we were in recent months, looking at the situation involving those largely of Venezuelan points of origin, where it didn't apply to them. Of course, then there was a decision being made by the Biden administration and the White House at that point in time that it would. And now we've got the whole kerfuffle and questions about what will be happening a little bit later this month. Let's see my rough calculation. Week and a half away? Sure, let's call it that. December 21st, that day, when Title 42 is supposed to be completely eliminated and unenforceable in any case. And so a couple of questions remain that we'll delve into a little bit more, but just to put words to them right now about what the next policies will be and what the response from the White House will be. I mean, they've had the challenges coming with that and also the potential expectation at this point anyway of new policies coming into place. There is also the possibility, some reporting, including from the New York Times on this point, that there may be actually a visit coming to the Borderland area from, well, maybe not one of the bigger names that we would have wanted to hear. I mean, at least some of the comments been saying about some leadership positions, including those in the White House or close thereby. They have no indication that that one is happening very quickly, but it has been said that it's being more than a little bit speculated, again, quoting specifically here from the New York Times, that Alejandro Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security, is expected to be potentially in or around the area at some point within the coming week. I think they were calling for it potentially on Monday. Let me double check here. Yep, expected to travel to El Paso on Monday for a previously planned trip. Again, specifically quoting the New York Times on that one. Some other interesting indications. Haven't heard much more about the potential for that, but of course it would come at a particularly, I'm going to choose to say, opportune time at this point, because with the resources being used, and I have to take one particular issue with, beyond the whole situation we're discussing here, they always have to kind of twist the knife a little bit. I feel like when we have these reportings going on, I'm still very much remembering a Sun Bowl broadcast from years ago, as we're coming up on that occurrence again this year, about the tiny mining town of El Paso, and just what? Do you not know anything about the place that you are supposedly broadcasting about the game from? And that's assigned a line here. Again, third paragraph of the New York Times story. It was the second time in recent months when large migrant crossings threatened to overwhelm the resources of the impoverished border town and the federal authorities, who are strained by what has been a steady arrival of migrants throughout the year. So I'm not saying that we don't have some of the poor zip codes in the area, but calling us an impoverished border town just means I'm not sure that it makes me have a couple of questions about the rest of the reporting going on there. I do have to say, because if you're calling this a town, among other things, and impoverished, sure, still concerned about funding levels and all the things that are being dealt with here. There are some interesting mentions of other things, including what was going on with busing and disaster declarations or lack thereof. Those more on those updates coming a little bit later in this hour as well. But just call us an impoverished border town as one of the start things just leads me to have a few other questions about the rest of it, I gotta personally say. But in any case, a lot of focus coming again from national and even statewide. One related thing, as there have been maybe more suggestions. Well, honestly, not too much coming from the governor's mansion in any case, because, of course, without there being a disaster declaration and therefore the bringing in of particularly other state resources, El Paso has not necessarily set it up on its own leadership-wise, but is very much not including the other part of it. At least seems to be the current and continuing position, both of, city leadership and the state here, is that, hey, if you want our help, let us know, has been more or less the previous position, my paraphrasing, not their actual statements. And, again, more coming up from our news partners there at KFOX 14 about the push for a potential disaster declaration, but rather push back against it as well, including from our news partners there at KFOX 14 article titled El Paso Mayor Denies Declaring a State of Emergency as Thousands Arrive at the Border. Now, a couple of questions have come up in the recent-ish past about how any of this funding, the activities, the things that have been going on previously, again, in more recent months, have been able to be put forth. And there have been emergency ordinances passed. And those have been either still under place or extended, I do believe, whatever is the most appropriate one, still in effect in any case, allowing therefore to be more resources being used. I don't know if busing is back on the table here, but as we've also been talking about in recent weeks, even as we are on the lead up to whatever the end of, December 21st and Title 42 was going to be, that, and quote, no way to prepare for this, or kind of similar things. Nobody can keep up with that. More referring to there, there's been similar things being said by our news partners there at KFOX 14, but that referring to there, that other quote, specifically from the title of the El Paso Matters article out late last week. So a lot of anticipation, a lot of expectation, and a lot of increasing numbers, even as we are maybe not seeing the full account for the previous week. As Glenn Stewart saying he remembers that comment from the Sun Bowl broadcast as well. I don't remember which year that was, but clearly it stayed with me because I just kind of was left thinking, what? Do you not know what's going on here? I'm saying he's going on to say that he heard it multiple times on ESPN games as well over the years. The majority of the country has no clue. Many people live out here in, I think your quotes implied here, in no man's land. I mean, sure, we are the whole centrally isolated thing, but seriously, just give it a spare Google. And if you're still going to call 600,000 plus, I think we're on the cusp of, 800,000 countywide. I'm pretty confident in that, depending on how you count the last census. If you're going to call that a small mining town, I got to know what you're going to call an actual town of like, a couple hundred people. Does that not even exist to you here? Okay, personal gripe aside, some of the numbers that we do have concretely out from, again, most recently for the last full weeks, including from still referencing the El Paso, Texas.gov/migrant-crisis. That's the website for the migrant crisis dashboard under the city of El Paso's reckoning, showing that we did establish a pretty well new high watermark for community releases by calendar week for the most recent week of what week actually is that, though, of week 49 out of it. I mean, think about it, there's 52 weeks in a year, and you can do the math from there. It's hitting not quite 7,000 for the last complete week. These I do not believe necessarily include yesterday's numbers, considering that they did also stretch into today whenever it came to releases, but about 6,950. So just call it just shy of 7,000 community releases, and the CBP in custody 7-day rolling average, not quite a new high water mark, but let's call that just shy of 4,000, 39 to be exact, if you want to be keeping along with your own card at home here. And it's the CBP encounter 7-day rolling average, just over 2,000, 2128 as well. So that a new high water mark in its own right. So those are some of the, again, brass tacks situations on the ground right now, even if we were looking at least one caravan having arrived being more or less escorted by Mexican authorities. In some cases exactly being done by that bus to the area specifically. There's some more things I want to get into when it comes to what the policies are being done south of the border, and not exactly an argument about why you should care about them, but why they are definitely impacting in our area, care about them or not. So all that and more to come out of this break, a lot more to break down, still more. Let's delve more into also what is being said by local elected officials, including the mayor of El Paso. So stay tuned, more Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Phone calls a little bit later, as we usually do, but in any case, more to talk about, so don't go anywhere. Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. Texas Congressman Tony Gonzalez is calling for El Paso city leaders to declare a state of emergency so that the people of El Paso will not shoulder the burden of the massive migrant influx. Meantime, Mayor Oscar Leeser continues to refuse to do so. The renewed calls come after about 1,000 migrants, mostly from Nicaragua, crossed the Rio Grande into El Paso over the weekend. 20 buses of migrants arrived in Juarez, escorted by police to cross the Rio Grande into El Paso. And a shoe store in downtown is destroyed after a dumpster fire spread to the building today. It happened at J&J Shoes Warehouse in the 300 block of El Paso Street. It took 50 firefighters to put down the fire, as well as a smaller fire that resulted across the street from flying embers. The situation was under control at 2 p.m. and nearby businesses that were evacuated were allowed to return. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Southbound on Memorial Highway, Loop 375 between Montana and the 10 Gateway, 10-minute delays. I-10 eastbound, Trans Mountain to the Patriots, a 5-minute delay. Slow traffic, Montana Avenue eastbound from the Gateway out to Joe Battle, 9-minute delays. And an accident at Sean Haggerty eastbound at McCombs. Take Dyer as your alternate. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. Our winter storm is certainly going to impact the borderland here over the next few days, with the main impact as that cold front arrives on Monday. That is when we'll have the strongest of the winds. After that, it's still going to be a bit windy, especially when you combine that with the cold temperatures that are settling in. So, the bigger story, the wind and the colder air, but that's not to neglect that we could still see some rain and snow. Log on to kfoxtv.com for your latest forecast.
This report is sponsored by Petco Love. Add the love of a pet at mega-texas.com. Make your holidays more merry. Adopt a pet during Petco Love's Texas Mega Adoption Event at participating animal shelters and Petco stores this weekend. Even merrier, all adoption fees are waived. Visit mega-texas.com to adopt a pet.
Hey, El Paso. Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and Fiat. I love the holidays. It's a time to be thankful for life and all its blessings. I'm thankful for you, our customers, and your families. As a gesture of gratitude, we're offering 0 down, no payments for 90 days and exceptional trade-in offers for any trade.
Trade and upgrade for less during the Big Finish sales event at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Upside down your current trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, regardless of make or model. Save thousands with 2.9% APR for 72 months, plus $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Ram 1500 Lone Star with no payments till next year. Get $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Dodge Charger GT, SXT, and on the all-new redesigned 2022 Jeep Compass with no payments till next year. All military personnel and first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina El Paso. El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 2.9% APR, 15 per thousand. Finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso. Weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you. Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. And let's talk El Paso.
Jackie Robinson's athletic feats were nothing short of incredible, but it's the faith that started off the field that made him the man we know him as today. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. Keeping you informed and up to date. El Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways you can get at us, a lot of things that you can mention there, as we have a lot of people chiming in, including Ion Graham, RJ, Barbara Carrasco, Glenn Stewart, John Brazelton, Louis Pinato, Glenn Surf, I didn't say that already, Richard Janicek, Flaco Jimenez, dropping those likes and reacts. We do appreciate some of those names, including James Holmes, Ted Kors, Ida Baez Gardner, Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, Flaco Jimenez. Do appreciate all that, as there's a lot more to get into today, but definitely a lot of focus on the current immigration border security situation, because, yeah, there's been a lot being said about that, including at least one retweet on the recent reporting from Bill Melugin, previous colleague I worked with in the area that has, of course, gone on to much bigger things in the interim. Actually got retweeted by Elon Musk there for a second. Not the most significant thing to report to here, but caught my eye for a second, so I figure it was worth mentioning and showing that, was pretty close in my estimate there, looking near Spur 1966 in the area where there were, thousands, hundreds, if close to thousands in those areas, depending on some of the estimates. Down near, kind of like between Spur 1966 and the Paso del Norte Bridge and the Santa Fe Street over those ways. Interesting calls coming specifically, as mentioned during our news update at the bottom of the hour there, from Rep. Tony Gonzalez, of course, representing the Texas 23rd Congressional District, so the next closest, and pretty well closer than it used to be anyway before redistricting happened, saying, quote, on his tweet, with this influx of illegal immigration in El Paso, Border Patrol agents have been taken off the front lines to do processing work. This has serious consequences for our national security. Policy changes from this administration are long overdue. Will certainly find myself agreeing on that particularly last point, as this has been kind of a Lone Ranger left policies. When we come down to what Title 42 actually is, I still hesitate to actually call it policy so much as it is stopgap and single line executable if entering, remove. based on pandemic restrictions. And the fact that that policy is becoming for better part of the progression over this last term of office, really you want to get down to it, has become more porous and less absolute as it is. By some estimates, maybe about 50% of cases that it could have potentially applied to are actually being done so, with the odd circumstance of moving, say, previously, the Venezuelan situation. It gets a little bit more complicated when we start talking about the Nicaraguan situation that we're going with here. So I want to get a little bit into more of the, and don't want to say that there isn't anything coming from the state here in case I give that impression. Governor Greg Abbott is actually calling for a 5-year mandatory sentence for human smugglers, according to the Texas Tribune there, including also our news partners there over at KFOX 14. This is more related to the legislative session, which is still definitely back of mind and definitely very important in the long run, but maybe a little bit less relevant to the current situation as the current situation continues to evolve more or less on the daily, if not the hourly, because as much as there was actually the presence is here on the U.S. side of the border. Again, one comment coming in from El Paso Mayor Oscar Leeser saying that he has denied that he would be interested in calling for a actual declaration of emergency here. And again, previously tweeted by Tony Gonzalez as well. It's time for El Paso to issue an emergency declaration due to the border crisis. And speaking there to our news partners at KFOX 14 saying, quote, the city of El Paso is paying for the crisis, part of the emergency declaration. What that does is highlight that El Paso needs help with funding as part of it, and solutions is part of it here. And there is, of course, federal assistance costs, those kind of things. Some of those other parts over on the migrant crisis dashboard do include some of the reimbursements that are still waiting on. Hasn't been updated in those numbers since, doesn't look like, let me see here, most recently updated on November 4th, so a little bit out of date, it does look like, by my reading. And some of the updates, other numbers, not till like end of October, early November, still looking at about $7.32 million, if I'm doing my math right. So still maybe some more updates and being needed there. But again, continuing quoting from the reporting of our news partners at KFOX 14, the full amount and the resources that could be mustered as part of that here. Again, there's not actually been much push here, and again, a repudiation of the idea of actually declaring a state of emergency here in El Paso. So those are parts of the situations, part of the issues that we got going on with us here. And so nationally, one of the other things that I wanted to mention, particularly from that New York Times reporting, a very interesting point being made about the actual legality of this. Again, it has long been a standing part of, again, more or less official Mexican policy. As long as you don't stay here, as long as you keep moving, we don't really care about it. So they actually had a little bit more in-depth on what are some of the actual requirements, or what are some of the actual policies that they have been having put into place, because, well, the reasons, I mean, there's been differences. There's been some different things coming back and forth, including the possibility of having southern border enforcement for Mexico itself, which was interesting to see, if apparently not the most permanent policy ever. Some of the interesting aspects of it come down to the idea that there's actually been temporary legal status been granted to some of those, therefore now coming to the U.S. to, without knowing specifics and breakdowns of this current situation, probably asylum seeking, if not other orders being sought there. They've been getting a temporary legal status in Mexico, allowed them to travel freely in the country for 180 days. And this is according to Santiago Gonzalez Reyes, head of the human rights offices in Juarez across the border from El Paso, again, quoting from the New York Times reporting on there. And that about 1,100 had been bussed into Juarez on Sunday afternoon, and about 19 or 20, depending on the actual reporting going on there, being moved here. So this is so much to say that this current influx, this current wave that we are looking at, and it's unclear how much more there may be. Again, other reporting going on that there was a different caravan actually stopped further down in the state of Chihuahua. So this, I don't think this would be one to call the situation, as much as it hasn't exactly been over at any given point in time. Might be even over in this current influx. We might be looking at the next evolution of it, as it kind of continuously does seem to change and evolve. That we are looking at, again, an older set of policies coming from Mexico, whether this is their inflection point, responding back to both U.S. and even state of Texas policies that have sought to essentially apply points of pressure and pain in order to effectuate change coming to the Mexico side. No exact instances or nothing directly I can point to there besides my own inference whenever it comes to that. But let's just say I hope that there is a strong, swift, and pretty sizable response coming both when it comes to the resources being seen in our community. We're looking at, again, people potentially being released onto the streets in these circumstances. Now, the Nicaraguan situation isn't quite exactly a carbon copy of the exact one that we're seeing by the Venezuelans, at least some of those that are being quoted in the vast amount of reporting going on and focus in our region about trying to go to other places. So that level of response that usually happens here may be strained, but it's still possible, as opposed to, again, when it came to the Venezuelan situation, there wasn't a lot of those in-country connections, places to go, quote-unquote sponsors, whether it be family members, just connections being had here. It appears to me if it exists at some level in this situation, exactly how effective that can be, or whether this will, I guess what it really comes down to, will this be we're looking at people having to camp out for lack of places to go, or will this be a overwhelming at points of transit for the near future anyway, bus stations, airports, etc., but that will be able to pass. But then, of course, there's also the question about the influx continuing to come in. Again, at least one more caravan being mentioned and more or less escorted. Again, there's a video, including those being tweeted out by Bill Malugin there, showing actual police escorts of what are purported to be the buses that then arrive and ultimately put out the occupants of the buses that then cross the border there. There's a lot of questions, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at here. But some of the responses, I'm not going to say that state or federal responses would be unwelcome in this case, but whether or not our local officials are going to be willing to actually explore that, or they're going to be looking at another potentially expensive scheme of busing out of here. It has, of course, ceased since the largest part of the Venezuelan situation did end within the last couple of months here. But if it would be willing to be coming back up or not, there was, of course, contingency situations and contracts that were established in the not quite immediate aftermath of that situation. And so those are a few of the swirling questions I do have at this point in time here. And not to say this will be the only thing we're talking about today, but I certainly expect it to take up a lot of our airtime, at least the first three segments here. There are a couple other stories, including ever so happened, the story that broke the morning I was there in Tucson visiting with our news, not our news partners, sorry to borrow a phrase, but our sister stations over there that will have some national impacts. And so I'm going to bring that one up as pseudo-local in the meantime. But tell you what, let's go ahead and take that next break right now and go ahead and open up those phone lines. If you want to get on the line or comment on the show here, all the comments coming by, we'll keep popping some of those up as well. But if you want to call in the show, phone lines open now. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Southbound on Memorial Highway, Loop 375 between Montana and the 10 Gateway, 10-minute delays. I-10 eastbound, Trans Mountain to the Patriots, a 5-minute delay. Slow traffic, Montana Avenue eastbound from the Gateway out to Joe Battle, 9-minute delays. And an accident at Sean Haggerty eastbound and McCombs. Take Dyer as your alternate. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
When we think of Christmas movies, we think of reindeer, angels, Santa, and sappy small-town romances. What if I told you a Chicago area maintenance man wrote one of the latter? Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You wash your hands, you brush your teeth, but what about the nose? How do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out the other nostril, flushing out allergens, mucus, and germs. And it's why cleaning your nose, the body's air filter, is the next evolution in daily personal hygiene. People try Navage for lots of reasons. Sinusitis, colds, allergies, snoring, things that make it hard to breathe through your nose. But over time, they find that cleaning their nose makes them feel better, a lot better. Over 3 million Navage users have written more than 100,000 reviews, averaging 4.7 stars, saying, best product I've ever used, and amazing, I love my Navage. Navage helps you breathe better, sleep deeper, and snore less, but the biggest payoff is improved health. Navage is good personal hygiene and can help you stay healthier. At Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Target, and online. Navage, NAV, AGE, Clean Nose, Healthy Life.
If you qualify for Medicare and Medicaid, El Paso Health Plus is for you. We offer great supplemental benefits for those with Medicare and Medicaid. El Paso Health Plus. Call 833-742-3125 or visit ephmedicare.com.
Want to get 7 streaming services for the price of 1? Sign up for a smart bundle that'll stimulate your brain. Featuring Curiosity Stream with the best documentary films and TV shows, Nebula for thought-provoking content from your favorite creators, and One Day University with the best lectures from the country's top professors, and so much more. It's perfect for families with all kinds of interests and great content for kids. It also makes a perfect holiday gift. Now at 40% off, get all 7 services for only $3.50 a month. Sign up now at smartbundle.com.
Hey, Texas! This time of year is all about coming together and enjoying time-honored holiday traditions or starting your own. This winter, make sure your fellow Texans, especially those with a serious mental health condition, know how to stay informed and protected from increased COVID-19 risks associated with serious mental illness. Getting vaccinated is pro-Texan protection against COVID-19. Visit www.vaccines.gov/search to find a vaccine provider near you.
Make your holidays more merry. Adopt a pet during Petco Loves Texas Mega Adoption Event at participating animal shelters and Petco stores this weekend. Even merrier, all adoption fees are waived. Visit mega-texas.com to adopt a pet.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. Be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. We have those phone lines open now there. If we had some people drop off, don't think I hit anything wrong. But if in case you want to get on the line there, that's the number to use. So throughout the rest of the program. So 915-544-5876-544-KTSM. Some interesting comments coming in over there that we will be diving into as well, including Barbara Carrasco saying, our mission, quote, FEMA's mission is helping people before, during, and after disasters, and our core values and goals help us achieve it. End quote. Her comment continuing saying, this is a mission from the Biden administration that this is a disaster question. When does after disaster apply to illegal immigration? Perpetual disaster? Some musings and some larger questions there. Louis Pinato chiming among others saying Abbott should close the border again. I think that would be a slight misunderstanding of the previous situation. I think you're referring to what essentially Gary Abbott did with it came to secondary inspections. So it wasn't closing the border, even if it may have kind of felt like that, at the very least, severely extending lead times whenever it came to particularly tractor trailers, 18-wheelers, trucks, and their cargo, because it wasn't, I think that even Abbott, as much as he has been willing to irk and tweak federal authorities and leaders when it comes to immigration policies with a lot of, you got the whole Operation Lone Star and pick a different one, and the busing that he has also established, though, I've seen some indications, I need to track down the actual reports here, that at the very least during the period when busing was happening out of the city of El Paso, we may have outstripped in the same time period what the state of Texas was doing with its entire efforts, which indicates in a couple of ways. But back to your core point about shutting down the border, I don't believe it would be technically correct to describe him as actually shut down the border, much as it was doing some very stringent enforcement of state level laws. Because, sure, DPS can do cargo inspections, but usually hadn't been done at that level, nor were they really set up to do so. It'd be one thing to be doing it constantly and over all of the time, but since it was kind of sudden and very specific, let's just call it, it was a push and a reason to bring particularly state-level governors within the state of the national state of Mexico, such as Chihuahua and all those other ones, to come to the table and make those cross-border agreements. So I don't think it would be correct to call it that, and so much more to say. I don't think it would actually be ineffective on this current situation. We're not talking about cargo. We're not talking about state inspections on something that is possible, whether or not they actually deploy resources out here, as Operation Lone Star has been notably absent in any metric that I'm aware of. would be very important. One other thing I want to say before we get back to those phone calls here, to have a call in right now that didn't want to make a comment on there, but said that they're very concerned about these situations, but also the taxes. Don't worry, we still got, that election going on. Yeah, I know it takes a lot for me to get off that soapbox for a minute, but we'll still be talking about that because there's a lot of points being brought up about that situation. But there was one thing that you wanted to say about marking the passing of a Garrett Calderon, who was a longtime resident of El Paso, but had originally come from California, an ex-firefighter and railroad man, and did a lot of great community work in the community for different organizations. So wanted to mark that. So appreciate the comment there. But tell you what, I've talked straight through this break now, catching up on some of this business. So we got those calls on the line. If you want to call in again, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Full up at the moment, just filled up. But again, if you want to get on the line, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. And okay, John Brazelton bringing up that actual thing. Yeah, let's inspect those Mexican 18-wheelers for safety reasons. Again, slow border traffic down to a crawl. Not sure if that one's actually going to work out that way for him, because you got to remember two things Abbott has been focused on more recently with the 5-year mandatory sentence for human smugglers he's pushing for within the state legislative session. That was in reference to the whole San Antonio situation where it was the trailer full of people that was found abandoned on the side of the road with a number of them deceased. That led to at least part of that and the secondary inspections, as well as, again, what he's pushing for now, seeking the minimum sentencing for at least 5 years for those involved in human smuggling. So not sure if, again, any of those issues would be the point on this, or that would just be kind of a just blanket, hey, you're going to cause problems for us, we're going to cause problems for you kind of situation. I also don't know if he's willing to go out on that limb for the, again, leadership locally, given there hasn't been as much probably buy-in as there has been in other places. Del Rio and Eagle Pass come to mind there. In any case, taking that next break right now. If you're on the line, stay there. Again, if you want to try to squeeze in on the line a little bit later, the number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Vehicles blocking the on-ramp at Gateway East at North Yarborough, Memorial Highway southbound between the Spur and the 10 Gateway, 20-minute delays with stop-and-go traffic. I-10 eastbound is slow with 5-minute delays transbound to the Patriot and 12-minute delays on Montana Avenue eastbound Trowbridge out to Zaragoza. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Hey, El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and Fiat. I love the holidays. It's a time to be thankful for life and all its blessings. I'm thankful for you, our customers, and your families. As a gesture of gratitude, we're offering 0 down, no payments for 90 days and exceptional trade-in offers for any trade.
Trade and upgrade for less during the Big Finish sales event at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Upside down your current trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, regardless of make or model. Save thousands with 2.9% APR for 72 months, plus $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Ram 1500 Lone Star with no payments till next year. Get $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Dodge Charger GT, SXT, and on the all-new redesigned 2022 Jeep Compass with no payments till next year. All military personnel and first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso. El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 2.9% APR, 15 per thousand. Finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone?
Do flowers have best friends?
I don't know.
Hey, look. Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Freedom of speech lives here.
To me, freedom of speech is being able to say anything you want.
El Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM.
I'm Joe Adams. I'm a pharmacist. I'm also a parent that knows the pain of losing their child to an opiate overdose. We lose 64,000 lives a year due to this epidemic. No one is immune from this. The members of the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy focus on ensuring that pharmacies and pharmacists are providing safe medications and patient services for you and your family. Learn how to keep you and your loved ones safe at nabp.pharmacy.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home.
I'm probably okay. I opened the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. A Libyan man suspected in the 1988 bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland, is back in lockup after making an appearance in a D.C. court. The elderly suspect limped into the courtroom bald with a gray beard and had trouble hearing the Arabic interpreter. A northern Washington state courthouse is on lockdown for an armed man in the lobby. Police have surrounded the Snohomish County building, and a negotiation is believed to be underway. Securing the release of ex-Marine Paul Whelan from a Russian prison is a top priority for the White House. That's according to National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
We are bound and determined to ensure that we work through a successful method of securing Paul Whelan's release.
Speaking to reporters, Sullivan said U.S. officials are working to come up with a deal with Russia to free Whelan, who's been detained in the country since 2018. The Sheriff's Department in Uvalde, Texas, where 19 students and 2 teachers were murdered back in May, did not have a policy on how to handle active shooters. That's one of the conclusions from a newly released independent review. CVS and Walgreens are agreeing to pay a combined $10.7 billion in a settlement over allegations they failed to adequately oversee opioid painkiller prescriptions. Lisa Taylor has more.
The funds will be distributed between states, local governments, and federally recognized tribes. Money will also go toward opioid crisis abatement and remediation programs. The 2 companies also agreed to implement controlled substance compliance programs that will create new mandatory training programs and will require additional layers of opioid prescription reviews. The overdose death rate from opioids tripled between 2011 and 2020. I'm Lisa Taylor.
A new study is linking certain types of screen time with OCD in children. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. A memorial concert is being held in Connecticut to honor victims of the Sandy Hook School massacre, which took place 10 years ago this Wednesday. Sarah Lee Kessler reports.
It'll include the Mozart choral piece Ave Verum Corpus. Violinist Philip Cates of the Philadelphia Orchestra collaborated with the musical director at St. Rose Church in Newtown to develop the program. It'll commemorate the 10th anniversary of the deadly rampage in which a gunman shot and killed 20 first graders and 6 educators at Sandy Hook Elementary School.
Top U.S. officials are holding discussions with China. Reports say U.S. and Chinese officials in recent days held candid and substantive meetings on a range of issues, including Russia's invasion of Ukraine, North Korea, and bringing home American citizens wrongfully detained in China. The meetings took place Sunday and Monday in a city neighboring Beijing. The former capital of the Confederacy is about to lose its last Confederate monument. Brad Siegel has more.
A statue of General A.P. Hill will come down in Richmond, Virginia. The general's remains at the site for more than 130 years will be reinterred in a cemetery. There are plans to give the monument to a Black History Museum, but Hill's descendants would like to see it moved to a Civil War battlefield. Richmond started removing Confederate monuments amid nationwide racial justice protests in 2020.
Director Christopher Nolan says he recreated a nuclear weapon explosion without CGI. Nolan recreated the explosion for his upcoming film Oppenheimer, which tells the story of the Manhattan Project and the creation of the atomic bomb during World War II. Speaking to Total Film magazine, Nolan said it was a huge challenge to take on when they decided to recreate the Trinity test, the first nuclear weapon detonation in New Mexico. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
This report is sponsored by Petco Love. Add the love of a pet at mega-texas.com. Make your holidays more merry. Adopt a pet during Petco Love's Texas Mega Adoption Event at participating animal shelters and Petco stores this weekend. Even merrier, all adoption fees are waived. Visit mega-texas.com to adopt a pet.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the Borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development, the El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
iHeartland in Fortnite. Now open.
Ready, know that?
Yeah.
The hottest concerts from the hottest artists. iHeartland in Fortnite. Games.
Yeah.
Friends. Fun.
One more time.
The hottest concerts from the hottest artists. iHeartland in Fortnite. Games.
Yeah.
Friends. Fun. Ready up and grab your squad. Go to iHeartRadio.com/iHeartland to start playing.
Stay tuned and stay informed with News Radio 690, KTSM, an iHeart radio station.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
News Radio 690, KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. That's right, back here live with you in the studio. Start of this week, full week this one. We got some of those holidays coming up, those kind of things that will affect things. But for this week, in here, full Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., as we are usually rest of the year. Anyway, December's a special time. We all know that. We've got some very serious things to talk about today. A lot of immigration, border security, state, local, national responses being talked about, questioned, wondering what comes next, all those kind of things as we're looking at quite the influx in our region, straining resources, and, well, there's a lot of other hyperbole and ads that is being put on there, but we can certainly talk about that and a whole lot more. Again, just one other thing to mention, as at least one caller off air brought up here. Yeah, there's an election going on. You got your last day early voting coming up tomorrow for you, so make sure to get out and go do that. Please do it. Let's make it not a 2% voter turnout. Okay, laugh is to keep from crying kind of time here. Any case, got a lot of people chiming in over on the social media, including those dropping those likes and reacts that we do appreciate, including, in the full list over here, Flaco Jimenez, Amber Bonda, Patricia Miles Muniz, Richard Janasik, James Holmes, Ion Grimm, Ted Kors, Ida Beza Gardner, Robbie Flores, and Monica Cervantes. To appreciate that. And one relevant-ish comment coming in, Barbara Carrasco saying that in relation to the idea about state-level action on immigration specifically, Barbara Carrasco saying Abbott cannot close the border or return illegal immigrants to Mexico. Argument is he will be in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 242, penalties and fines so exorbitant it would scare anyone. I asked this question to the governor's office and was asked to read the above law, but I'm still thinking. Interesting point to be made there. We are, of course, taking those phone calls full up at the moment, but if you want to, again, squeeze in a little bit later on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Let's hop straight back in with that now as we are talking about the things affecting us here in the Borderland. We have Frankie and Messia on the line with us here right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
All right, right out of the box. You cannot be serious. This is outrageous. I've never heard of anything beyond the pale of normal American thinking. And to wit, I speak. Over the weekend, or the week, was this thing in New York with young Republicans hosted by that nut job from Georgia, Marguerite Thuggery Taylor Greene, right? Along with this Steve Bannon guy. And he went on and going about, bigotry and hatred, hey, how wonderful that is, and anti-Semitism and stuff like that. And she said that if she was in charge, along with Steve Bannon, January the 6th, they would have succeeded, which means, everybody out there in the Southwest border region, we would have had an insurrection, an overturn of the United States of America democracy. Now, what kind of nonsense is that? Number two, the White House gets out there and says, rightly, I would say, hey, we can't be saying stuff like this. then you got this nutjob spokesperson from the Young Republicans who says, hey, wait a minute, freedom of speech. The United States government has this blew my mind on this one, has an obligation to support hate, bigotry, and anti-Semitism, whatever. And this is beyond the pale, Andrew. This is not right. This is so wrong. I can't. You've got to have a different word to explain wrong. What do you think of that?
There are a lot of words we can't use on radio that I'd like to in certain circumstances, but as much as it comes to that, let me just make it perfectly clear. Anyone calling anyone based on anything besides their actions, what they've done in life, positions they made clear. So talking about immutable characteristics such as, race, creed, and I would argue religion definitely falls under that here as a reason someone needs to have something happen to them, and particularly in the negative sense here, is just unacceptable. That kind of bigotry does not have a place. And sure, you can say it, but that doesn't mean that anyone else has to agree with it, not come back at you at it. And when you start, getting certain lines here, there are certain things out there. I've sat in on Supreme Court case where they talk about fighting words or inciting of violence here, that there literally is, and it is the current law and interpretation of said laws within the United States, that there is no absolute right. There is no right that is not subject to reasonable restrictions on, including speech. As much as I am very much in the business and focus on free speech and do not tolerate much idea of censorship, there are certain things that go beyond the pale. I mean, the examples that were made specifically and I was in one of those real egregious cases too. I do believe it was, I'm not remembering the exact name of it, but it was a Westboro Baptist Church, one of those cases on their picketing outside of an actual, a funeral. And the family of said funeral of the person who was being interred there, suing them. And some of the phrases that were brought up during the actual oral arguments of that case were about the idea of, shouting fire in a crowded theater, speech that can be reasonably understood and implied to therefore cause harm by misdirection and other things, is something that is subject to penalties. As much as you can say, well, can I say fire wherever I want here? But if you know that people are going to be harmed by it and the reaction of others, even if you didn't cause it, you incited it, even if you didn't then end up trampling anyone. And same thing kind of with fighting words. You can't just go up to say to someone, I'm going to punch you in your expletive face and not expect them to have a response to saying, well, I didn't actually hit him. Like there are things within law that deal with this and that are reasonable, I think, in a lot of ways. I think it does come down to a little bit of actually, what do you want to see in society? What do you want to see in life? And I think that some of the laws that come down on this end up going way too far. But again, free speech as a general idea does not mean that you are free from consequences of your speech. It just means that as wrote and by matter, you don't have to seek permission from your speech. You can say it, but there are also, of course, maybe things are going to come back on you.
Okay, you're spot on with everything. I'm 100% with you. Free speech comes with responsibility, just as you were saying. But if you have a group of people or a society that allows or tolerates ignorance to the degree we were just talking about, if it's a small little group, okay, it's just like a little gnat at a picnic. You can deal with that. But when it starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger, you're beginning to get serious problems here because you've got so many stupid people in this society that just suck up on everything that they hear and they believe this nonsense. This is very bad, Andrew. Very, very, very bad. And that's my ending comment.
No, what you think? Well, thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
Okay, Andrew.
All right. Let's go ahead and squeeze in another call or two here before we hit that next break. Again, the number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Raul in the Northeastern line with us here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew, I agree wholly with Frankie. And I also agree with Eric, the philosopher, and what he says about your show, most of your callers and posters, and the right-wing media and its lies and propaganda. Now, the news is that Fox News' future is in question as Rupert Murdoch heads to court in the Dominion $1.6 billion lawsuit. Now, Sean Hannity's show is heard on this station. Now, here's a little language of the letter seeking leniency for the January 6th defendant, George Kenney. Now, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison after pleading guilty for being the first Trump-tard rioter to breach the door into the Capitol and letting other Trump-tard insurrectionists in. Now, Tonto Trump-tard Kenney wrote, I let one man's rhetoric and lies bring me to a place that couldn't be more far from reality. How do I tell my 9-year-old daughter and my 6-year-old son that their dad messed up so bad that I won't be in their lives for some time? This has been the most shameful, embarrassing, and devastating decision I've ever made in my life. I have lost so much already because of my stupidity and arrogance. I lost friends, my career, my 401k and life savings that I had to use to keep up with my bills and kids. I let the media bring my focus to a place of incorrect beliefs. I did get caught up in all the lies and made up news going around from politicians and celebrities in child sex rings. So again, this is what Eric the Philosopher is saying about your show, listeners, and the right-wing media. I'm sorry, not listeners, posters. I don't know what most of the listeners believe. But nonetheless, listeners of right-wing media allowing one man's rhetoric and lies to bring these Trumpers to a place that couldn't be more far from reality. And the right-wing media and propaganda is bringing Trumpers into incorrect beliefs, far from reality, by getting caught up in all the lies and made-up news going around there. Now, here's the reality. Trump lost a legitimate election. He knew he lost. He was told by his people he lost, including his attorney general.
Okay, understand that part of it here, but you think that going to say that this program is promoting part of that? We take on people's sincere thoughts, calls here, and as much as we, just a reminder, do not allow red statements on here. If you're wanting me to review something and therefore to comment on it, that's one thing. You can feel free to submit that to us here. But if you're saying that this program is a part of it, we've reported on January 6th and the incidents that, of course, happened during it. Part of our live coverage on air, bringing you the updates that happened on that day. So, I mean, if you're going to say that any of this is promoting it, we certainly have individuals that have different opinions on this, and we'll certainly discuss them and bring up the points that are relevant or not with it. But I got to say, it sounds a lot like you're saying that this is something that you find me personally supporting there, if you're saying that this program is a part of it, considering I'm the host of it here. So is that truly what you're coming out and trying to say is part of that here?
No, I agree with Eric. The way you handle some of these things come off as spinning, distracting, diverting, shilling for the right wing. That's the way you come across to me and to Eric. And I think if most El Pasoans who are on our side of the ledger would agree with me and Eric and others. This isn't a right-wing radio station. I understand, Andrew, who your audience is for the most part. They listen to this all from early in the morning to late in the evening, and that's your audience for the most part. Myself, Eric, Frankie, we're the outliers in this group, but the majority of the people in this community.
All right, well, if you feel that way, I mean, there are some voting interesting situations in this community, but let's also just make that perfectly clear that because you feel you're in the majority of any group, idea, presentation, etc., doesn't mean you have the right to trample on and call everyone else in there other things. Again, free speech, you, of course, can say those things, but don't think that's going to lead to not necessarily having consequences or push back on that. So if you're essentially on also the idea of it being everyone else out there listening to this is idiots, it's interesting that you then choose to associate with such a thing there. In any case, appreciate the point in the call for what it's worth. I guess in this case, you're feeling a little bit more personally attacking, confrontational than actually just talking about the issues here, because we got important things going on in this community right now that I want to make sure we refocus on. A lot of situations involving border security, immigration, the state, local, and national response to it. So we're going to go ahead and take that next break right now. Again, if you want to get on the line and talk about some of these important situations, local focus as we are throughout the week here. Friday is coming, yeah, but don't get it twisted and say we're already there now doing the whole free-for-all thing. So on that point, let's get back to that next break and then back on the lines after that. Again, the number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Road debris is blocking the center lane of Memorial Highway southbound just before the spur, and there's stop-and-go traffic with 37-minute delays from the Spur down to the 10 Gateway. Slow traffic on Montana Avenue eastbound from Trowbridge to Zaragoza with 11-minute delays. And watch for an injury accident southbound Mesa at Executive Center Boulevard. Take Stanton Street instead. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Petco Love. Add the love of a pet at mega-texas.com. Bring home the love of a pet to your family this holiday. At the Petco Love Make More Merry Mega Adoption event this weekend, adoption fees are waived and special Petco offers. Find a participating shelter or Petco near you at mega-texas.com to adopt a pet.
Sometimes life makes choices for us, so we need to make the most of the choices we do have. If you qualify for Medicare and Medicaid, then El Paso Health Plus is the plan for you. This local plan offers supplemental benefits like dental, vision, OTC benefits, and much more. El Paso Health Plus also has programs designed to keep you independent and healthy. You have choices. Choose local. Choose El Paso Health Plus.
Want to get 7 streaming services for the price of 1? Sign up for a smart bundle that'll stimulate your brain. Featuring Curiosity Stream with the best documentary films and TV shows. Nebula for thought-provoking content from your favorite creators. And One Day University with the best lectures from the country's top professors. And so much more. It's perfect for families with all kinds of interests. And great content for kids. It also makes a perfect holiday gift. Now at 40% off, get all 7 services for only $3.50 a month. Sign up now at smartbundle.com.
Guys, 2022's been a roller coaster year, so spoil her this Christmas by giving her the next best thing to wearing nothing at all with soft, silky, naturally nude pajamas exclusively from Pajamagram. Sensuous and smooth, naturally nude pajamas feel just like her own bare skin. Even more alluring than lingerie, the texture and touch of these pajamas is so seductive that you'll both love the feel of them. She'll love the feeling of wearing next to nothing at all, and you'll love the way they look. Best of all, Pajamagram does the wrapping for you with free gift packaging. Order today, and Pajamagram will also include a free matching naturally nude nightie with the purchase of naturally nude pajamas. That is free gift packaging and a free naturally nude nightie when you order today. Just go to Pajamagram.com. It's fast, easy, and delivery by Christmas is guaranteed. That's Pajamagram.com.
Donna from Louisiana. The storm just hit, and we went from donating to the food bank to needing it.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, more or less the main one, but also find us on similar other Facebook pages, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. A lot to get into here today. Again, a lot of questions, evolving situations involving the border security and immigration situation in our region, as is then, I think, further compounded by the whole situation involving Title 42 and its pending end when you consider that there are other further court challenges, even on the pending end of it. Let me say pending at least one more time for you here, but also the fact that there is the potential for more policy to be put forth. If it's going to be, I would say that whatever shape it may take, I would hope it happens sooner rather than later, as we are then getting down to some very tight margins when there are even further expectations, actions, outside actors and agencies impacting this. So just to sit back and say, well, we'll figure it out as soon as we're there is not working out too well in our region at this exact moment here. Again, some of the big headlines we're talking about today are about the 1,000 to 1,500 estimated that have come across the U.S.-Mexico border right here in our area. Again, looks like, if I'm looking at the locations on some of the videos that have been being posted around on social media and from our news partners there at KFOX 14, of being primarily near the Spur 1966, kind of on that part near the closest area of Juarez there, kind of on the downtown west side central-ish area. So before like the Paso del Norte and the Santa Fe bridges is where it looks like to me, which has been one of those points of crossings more focused on in our area recently, but putting us in not exactly happen to be territory being talked about previous such incidents in, say, Eagle Pass and Del Rio. So a lot of focus on our area here. Anyway, let's look back on the phone lines here right now. Follow up at the moment, but again, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Luis in the Mission Valley calling in right now there. Luis, thanks for joining us.
Oh, yes, Andrew, thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, sure thing. What's on your mind?
I wanted to touch base on, saw an interview with our Congresswoman this weekend where she was stating that there's monies allocated and that the city has not been used, has not used it. And also, I believe the mayor had made a comment that we have been getting paid for everything, for everything that we've been spending on with the situation with migrants. I just want to say that, that's a good thing. Not to question them. I love our Congresswoman. And then another thing, I want to send a shout out to Raul in the Northeast. He made a really good point right now. Something that I've often thought about. I listen to you. I hardly call anymore, but wow, he put into words my thoughts about the all day broadcasting and listening to the bullhorn. So I just think he made a really good point. Good for you, Raul. And thank you very much, Andrew.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Take care.
All right. I mean, we do have other hosts on this show here. And as we've said, since we first began doing this, and particularly since we became the Daily, which has just over 2 years ago, actually, we were doing that, is that this show, we do things slightly differently here. We do more communication, the back and forth, the feedback from the community here. So we trust our national hosts to do what they have. And if you're tuned in for that as well, I mean, it's good to stay informed in a variety of ways. But if you want to talk about the things that affect us here in the Borderland, then, well, this is the place that we do that here. So let's get to more of those calls on the line here. We do have Barbara on the west side here with us right now. Here, Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew, for taking my call. Let's see. I'm sorry. I didn't understand where I was talking to you. Just to say a few remarks on that last caller, where he said that the city hasn't paid for the money that was used on the illegal immigrants. Well, that's not so. We're waiting for $7 million. Mayorkas is coming down. Let's see what he does and how long it'll take the mayor to use the funds that he has in COVID, unspent COVID funds, to deal with the illegal immigrants. So to say that we've gotten paid, this gentleman is certainly uninformed. And regarding the busing into El Paso, I think those that are being bused are those that have been pre-approved in Mexico in those specific locations, if you recall, that Mayorkas set up on the Mexican side for pre-approval, where the Mexican government is actually entering data into our data, our Customs and Border Patrol data center portal. So I think that's where the busing is coming from. And I don't recall all the cities, but I know it's across Juarez, it's Laredo, I think Brownsville, and I don't remember the fourth location in Texas, but that's where the busing are coming from. The next thing I wanted to say is, America, we've been punked. Why do I say that? Because Elon recently said Twitter is both a social media company and a crime scene. The information that has been coming out of Twitter just blows the mind as to what they were doing there. And I want to talk about how the Biden administration does a workaround, and that's what they did with Twitter and us in El Paso and everybody that's on Twitter. Recall that they used OSHA as a workaround to force workers to get vaccinated or they lose their jobs. Remember when they used the workaround on the humanitarian parole to get around asylum claims because they want people coming in faster. They don't want them to have to wait for asylum. And remember when they used the workaround when the Border Patrol was told not to assign migrant registration numbers so they could get more and prepare for more illegal immigrants coming into the country. And now the workaround that they're using is busing illegal immigrants via shelters where they keep the illegal immigrants in those shelters to get pre-approved to bring them to our border like they did just now, and they just come into the United States. So the idea, and I use the reference, America, you've been punked. You know, Raul and them and this gentleman that called and Frankie believe that we sit 8 hours a day listening to conservative media. That is so far from the truth, at least in my case. But I do study national news, and I am aware, and if these gentlemen would listen, they have formed their opinion on misinformation from the very Democratic Party that they support. Their party sent FBI agents, CIA agents, people from Britain to work at Twitter to manipulate the information that we get. And what is so sad is those that are so strong and adamant about their feelings about this administration and the policies of this administration, they're the ones that have been punked the hardest because they still can't see that they're being manipulated. I feel, and this is my opinion, I have a lot of objections to the policies that this administration puts in place, but it's not because it's a Democrat president. I wish President Biden would have learned something from President Clinton regarding policy and reaching across the aisle, but that hasn't happened. And the reason I say punked too is look what social media did, look what the FBI did and the DOJ when we find out that Christopher Wray and Bill Barr both authorized the FBI to meet monthly, quarterly, and then weekly with Twitter and Facebook. We have been royally punked, and that was a show. But just think about how Raul and Frankie and Chris or whatever Eric is, how embedded they are in their belief that the Democratic Party is doing right. When an independent buys Twitter and it's disclosed and he reveals all these emails, put the dots together. They're all falling in place. They did everything they could to keep Trump out, and once he got in, they continued to impeach him. And then we find out that it was the DNC, that it was Clinton, that it was Sussman, that it was James Baker, all of them in creating a false narrative. And you wouldn't get somebody who has dug their heels in on this administration to understand how we've all been manipulated, but those who support the president have been manipulated the most. And it's all El Paso.
Let me just say this, that anytime there's a lack of transparency, whether it comes governmentally or whatever it comes to like big companies, I mean, sure, sometimes it's kind of thought it was like, well, that's just how companies work here, and who really cares what goes into the sausage, right? But I am of the kind of opinion here that coming back from the Upton Sinclair era, that you should absolutely care what goes into the sausage, because you don't know what's actually coming out of it. And okay, that was sausage in a literal sense, and here we're more talking about like the social media sausage, so to speak, about what goes into it, the policies are on it. I mean, as much as we've had our various frustrations personally and professionally with these different platforms that, yes, we're on, so not meaning to sound hypocritical in that way, but it's kind of a necessary evil in this, in our perspective, as the reason we keep putting this out in the various many ways that we do, because it is where people are wanting to communicate, even if there are questions that I continue to have about exactly what are the policies that are in place. Because I mean, as much as how your news feed or your most recent or your popular likes, those kind of things can seemingly randomly shift. You just think of, well, what am I going to do besides kind of sit back and take it? Because what I'm going to do, go to a different social media platform. There have been many upstarts over the years, but few have found the level of success that some of the big ones we're talking about, Facebook, Twitter, and some other ones. There have been other ones that again have tried to and often tap into smaller communities. But whenever you're talking about the modern marketplace of ideas, the way I think about it, yeah, you're going to be hard pressed to find some more influential than that. So minor policy changes can end up having a big impact on the concept of free speech. Again, sure, the idea of government censorship doesn't technically apply to them here, but again, I still have a firm argument in mind that given the fact that, again, tiny capricious changes can have serious impacts on what is even allowed to be discussed here, much less about the actual, reach, presence, etc. I'm not saying that it can't be used ever for a good thing. I mean, again, taking people who want to literally cause and espouse harm on each other off, deplatforming them, don't have much gripe with that. But when you start dragging in other categories of, well, you could be, we think that there's some maybe relation there that we can't really prove, but in our defense and to make sure it's not a part of it, we're just going to take you off there. it starts becoming concerning because there is more control on the actual effectiveness and output of this concept of free speech than I would argue almost any government ever has because of the way these platforms have developed and the way they have come. So that's why, sure, it is very relevant to the discussions we have here, if we may be a little bit far afield for the start of the week. But hey, we were off last week, so for Friday, so I kind of understand the pressure relief still being needed here. But again, let me just further say this, that these policies, I don't know if federal regulation is going to be the answer for it, because as much as there is lack of transparency there, at least things will have to be voted on, put into bills, etc. There still has been these kind of, backdoor things that have been coming out. And sure, the arguments have been made about, well, everyone, it was available to everyone. Yeah, but since this was all handshake agreements and not actually anything legislated, there's still not a whole lot of transparency on the actual effectiveness of it, I gotta say there. And also to the point, I think that you brought up, as well as the previous caller did, about the idea of there being prepaid. I think there's just let me clarify here real quick. Overall, again, on the City of El Paso's, the Migrant Crisis Dashboard, elpasotexas.gov/migrant-crisis, there is some enumeration of what has been prepaid, specifically reimbursed or prepaid by the federal government for local expenses. Was about $2 million prepaid on October 12th by their reckoning. There has been more money that has been submitted to be reimbursed, numbering about, again, still about $7.32 million. What was actually referenced there was a story from our news partners over there at KFOX 14 on Friday, speaking exclusively to them, saying that there is quote, there is funding immediately available that can be tapped into that is in the possession of the City of El Paso that we believe is worthy of consideration, referring to about $10 million in federal funding coming from the American Recovery Plan Act. I do believe the American Rescue Plan money. She went on to say, it is my understanding that the City of El Paso has $10 million in the bank in the American Rescue Plan money that they've had for some time, and going on to say that this would be a good use of that in regards to the migrant situation. So I think that's where some of that conversation is also coming for on its own basis.
Well, I don't think that it's a good idea. If that money is supposed to be specifically used for COVID, that she would suggest that they use it for illegal immigration. So there's a limit to everything, and that's what our Congresswoman doesn't understand.
Fair enough here. Well,
in my opinion.
Yeah, well, thanks for the
Thank you,
point of the call. I
Andrew.
do appreciate it.
Bye.
All right, and with that, we got to take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, more calls on the line, more comments, doing as we do through both hours of the show here. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Again, that number, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. Texas Congressman Tony Gonzalez is calling for El Paso city leaders to declare a state of emergency so that the people of El Paso will not shoulder the burden of the massive migrant influx. Meantime, Mayor Oscar Leeser continues to refuse to do so. The renewed calls come after about 1,000 migrants, mostly from Nicaragua, crossed the Rio Grande into El Paso over the weekend. 20 buses of migrants arrived in Juarez, escorted by police to cross the Rio Grande into El Paso. And a shoe store in downtown is destroyed after a dumpster fire spread to the building today. It happened at J&J Shoes Warehouse in the 300 block of El Paso Street. It took 50 firefighters to put down the fire, as well as a smaller fire that resulted across the street from flying embers. The situation was under control at 2 p.m. and nearby businesses that were evacuated were allowed to return. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
A crash on southbound Memorial Highway at Iron Medics Drive. Exit is off to the left, but there's still delays. Southbound from the Spur down to Edgemere, it's a 20-minute delay. I-10 westbound between Airway and Patriot, that's a 5-minute stop and go. A crash reported Artcraft eastbound at Upper Valley Road, and just a heads up, blowing dust advisory is out till 7 o'clock tonight in El Paso. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. Our winter storm is certainly going to impact the borderland here over the next few days, with the main impact as that cold front arrives on Monday. That is when we'll have the strongest of the winds. After that, it's still going to be a bit windy, especially when you combine that with the cold temperatures that are settling in. So the bigger story, the wind and the colder air, but that's not to neglect that we could still see some rain and snow. Log on to kfoxtv.com for your latest forecast.
This report is sponsored by Petco Love. Add the love of a pet at mega-texas.com. Make your holidays more merry. Adopt a pet during Petco Love's Texas Mega Adoption Event at participating animal shelters and Petco stores this weekend. Even merrier, all adoption fees are waived. Visit mega-texas.com to adopt a pet.
Hey El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and Fiat. I love the holidays. It's a time to be thankful for life and all its blessings. I'm thankful for you, our customers, and your families. As a gesture of gratitude, we're offering 0 down, no payments for 90 days and exceptional trade-in offers for any trade.
Trade and upgrade for less during the Big Finish sales event at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Upside down your current trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, regardless of make or model. Save thousands with 2.9% APR for 72 months, plus $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Ram 1500 Lone Star with no payments till next year. Get $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Dodge Charger GT, SXT, and on the all-new redesigned 2022 Jeep Compass with no payments till next year. All military personnel and first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina El Paso strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 2.9% APR, 15 per thousand. Finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Staples has tech gifts for everyone on your list at great prices. Right now at Staples, the new Apple AirPods Pro 2nd generation is just $199. You save $50. In-store only offer ends 12/17, limit 2. The latest tech gifts now at Staples, the working and learning store. This report is sponsored by Staples Stores.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
It's important to know what's going on, especially around the world.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Children who grow up in poverty are part of a destructive cycle. At Child Fund International, we find this unacceptable. In 25 countries, we are vigorously fighting poverty and improving the lives of children and their families. Learn more at childfund.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or join us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Lot to talk about here, a lot to get to, and a lot we are delving into, but it's a couple of the main things we're talking about here today. Of course, the burgeoning immigration, border security situation, state, local, federal responses being discussed because, well, there's a lot to it. It's estimated between about 1,000 to about 1,500 crossing specifically last night into today are still being actually released into today. Again, there's the potential being reported on of actual visit of the federal law enforcement authorities on this, heads of DHS, etc., but a lot still evolving there as we're looking at potentially more coming with this. So a lot of that response, a lot of the potential funding, policies, all of that very much in flux and under discussion here. So those are a couple of things, but let's back to those phone lines now. Give that number to get if you want to squeeze on 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Eric on the east side here with us right now. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Hello there. Trump and Republicans controlled every branch of the federal government, and they ran on immigration, and they didn't fix any of our immigration or asylum laws. So it's Barbara who's been punked. And almost all conservative media shames, demonizes, and attacks all those who speak out against racism, against people of color, and white supremacy 24/7, like when they use loaded buzzwords like political correctness and wokeness. So generally, conservatives just blindly and habitually defend racism against people of color and white supremacy. And your caller, Stephen, from last Thursday is a perfect example of that. I quoted Barbara Carrasco's militant white supremacist article she linked that said, with over 15 million illegal Mexicans within America, La Raza, the race, works to recapture the 4 border states back into Mexico, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. That was what I quoted, and Stephen used a form of whataboutism, saying I was supporting La Raza and their racist views by quoting Barbara's white supremacist literature she shared on your page. And I wasn't defending La Raza, and it's pretty crazy for Barbara to say other people are misinformed when every single source of information she shared on your page that I've personally seen has either been like extremist white supremacist literature or sources of information that have zero credibility, like Newsmax and Project Veritas. And so, people really need to think more about how they assess the credibility of information sources. And, I wanted to quote something real quick, on top of all that, because I was doing a lot of research on white supremacy and Stephen Miller. And I found this New York Times article that's directly relevant to the concerns of right-wing people with the border right now. This article is back from 2017. And if you don't mind, Trump administration officials, under pressure from the White House to provide a rationale for reducing the number of refugees allowed into the United States next year, rejected a study by the Department of Health and Human Services that found that refugees brought in $63 billion more in government revenues over the past decade than they cost. And Trump and Republican information sources silenced that study from within Trump's own Health and Human Services department. And right-wing media generally just always misrepresents how much refugees and immigrants cost by not citing any context or any long-term studies. They just reference numbers to scare the uneducated. And it really is unfortunate, and it does a disservice to the discussion on immigration because, like I said, Trump and Republicans, they controlled every branch of government, and they didn't do anything to fix our laws.
Okay, let me just say on the first part here, I agree with you on two of the points that you brought up there that, yeah, on this and frankly, a bunch of other subjects that happened during the Trump administration, while they did have control of, both the houses of the legislature and the White House, of course, there wasn't a lot of movement on some of the promised things. Gun control actually comes up in mind with one of them. Had a lot of people that were very involved and interested in the Hearing Protection Act and thought it would be a slam dunk coming in there, but there actually didn't end up being much movement. And in fact, regression on the issue from those that would have been otherwise supporting the Trump administration. So not calling that what you might call a regression, but still that idea here. And the fact that, yeah, we ended up with, sure, MPP, migrant protection protocols, so-called Remain in Mexico policies and Title 42 out of the Trump administration. It has been a long-standing issue. Trump administration and previous ones as well, going back to, frankly, you have to go back to Reagan before you find substantial actual movement when it comes to the issues of immigration, reform, border security, etc. There have been a few stopgaps, a few maybe budget increases, say, I want to say under the second George Bush administration, GW that is, saw some, remember, around sizable around here, increases in the baseline staffing level and the actual buildup of agents, which is not really possible within any one administration. So calling that shot at that point in time was significant. And part of the reasons we explained to me why we're at the staffing levels that we are now. But that was more of like a funding change as opposed to new actual policy. So yeah, there are definitely a lack of policy having been, or let me correct myself and actually clarify, lack of laws being passed here. Most of the laws that we got in place, such as the actual construction of the immigration courts or the way that the whole asylum process works, has not been changed, modified, really anything done to it within, well, more than my lifetime. That's pretty simple and confident to say. So the fact that we are still at this point and at these impasses is definitely not a good situation, regardless of what administration it's under. I mean, it's kind of like the before kind of ending of the previous administration and going on during this one with the whole infrastructure acts. It was always about, infrastructure week is next week was a common phrase. So yeah, this has been an ongoing problem, absolutely, and one that needs to be seen more done. I don't expect out of this current administration we're going to see much along those lines here, particularly with the lame duck session of Congress. It's being put forth, particularly with the DACA, the Dreamers and those kind of things potentially being impacted, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one either, particularly since that I think that, frankly, my analysis of this administration is probably going to want to just put a policy in place that will be probably revamp Title 42 with maybe a better name, better other things with it. But let me just say the nonprofit community that I'm aware on this, including local NGOs, etc., is not exactly having a rose-colored glasses on what's coming next, even if there is an administration that could be argued would be maybe more friendly to them. But still, I think there are some, rubber hit the road moments that are going on here. But to the other part about people being informed and knowing their sources, yeah, people absolutely need to do. But that's why I got to tell you, each time you keep bringing this up about how, and therefore everyone I disagree with is wrong and bad. Like, let's talk about the sources. Let's talk about the specifics they're talking about here. Because, yeah, anyone's positing that the idea that any one race is inherently better, more superior, or any race based on their immutable characteristics is therefore inferior is going to be wrong. And is going to be not agreed with as much on this program here. Again, they're going to be able to, talk about the things that we need to and bring up this subject here. I hope that we talk about local things more often than not, as is kind of both the name of the show and the purpose here. But if we really want to drill into it, the idea of anyone espousing these things going to have a good time in any way that it is here. And the idea you're talking about with La Raza specifically, or the concept here, is one that we've talked about briefly previously. I'm aware of it in concept here. Don't have much scholarly works to speak to that I can point to here, but the idea of the reconquista, of the idea of taking back lands and areas that used to belong to Spain and Mexico in due course, back by simple population idea. It's somewhat of a theory out there that I don't know if I totally subscribe to, but there are some groups out there, what I would call fringe groups for the most part, that really put forth this idea as, yeah, we want to achieve this as not being mainstream in any particular way. And that's why when people bring it up, I'm like, okay, that's interesting, but until I start seeing more popular support, control, etc. as part of it here, I'm not going to buy it either, because there's plenty of people whom, the border crossed them, so to speak, given the history of this country. So the idea of saying that, well, it's just all of these insert, minority or subsect or ethnicity here as being not correct in that analysis. And it doesn't really matter what minority we're talking about there, or any subset of any group, because if you're just calling them they're this way because that's just how they are, yeah, not going to work out, and you're going to have a bad time of it here. So I guess thanks for the point and call, what it's worth. But again, just going to reinforce with you, if you want to talk about the actual issues and the things we're going about, that's what we're going to get into here. I think we have time to squeeze in one more quick call. We do have Kevin on the east side with us here right now. Kevin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. I'd like to talk trash with you.
Okay.
Recently, we had holiday, Thanksgiving, and people's trash and garbage schedules got mixed up.
Oh, sure.
And it was 3 weeks before we had relief from that on our side of town. And I think a solution is thinking back to way in the beginning when they started this blue can, gray can business.
No, sure.
They were picked up at the same time, in our case on Friday, every Friday. And then finally, someone got the idea that, okay, let's economize here, and we'll have the garbage picked up, and then we'll have the trash or the recycle picked up only once every 2 weeks. Okay, that's not working out too well. And
okay.
As a result of that, there is a lot of recycle that can't be picked up because the cans are overflowing. So what people do instead is, I've seen this, and we do it too sometimes. Sorry, we put it into the garbage.
Mm.
So that the idea of environmentalists and people who care about these kind of things is crushed, because we wind up taking a recycle, throw it in the garbage, and what good is that? I have a solution too, and here's the solution. If people want to pay more on their own, this is not citywide, this is just people who want to volunteer for this program, and the city could do a study on this. I would like to have instituted a golden receptacle. So we have blue, gray, and golden for the ones who want to, have two or one recycle every week.
Mm-hmm.
Pick up. And I'd be willing to pay for it, I believe, if the city could do a study on this and find out what it would cost to satisfy people who are not satisfied with having their recycle picked up only every 2 weeks. Because now, look, we got the holidays on us already.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that stuff hanging around, and people are going to be tempted, as I am, to throw it into the regular garbage. So I'd like to recommend that as a solution. What do you think?
I think you're starting getting into a maybe not being able to be a actual, I don't know, a government response, a local program, government program part of it here. Started getting to have to be something being done by a third party. There are actually other cities out there that do a third bin, a green bin for compostables, and sometimes that ends up being an actual like private company that comes and does it. You pay a little bit for it in order to be more sustainable that way, and you get into getting a little bit of compost, fertilizer, etc. back. So I think part of the reason that they went to the whole 2-to-1 from every week to once every 2 weeks when it comes to the pickup of the blue bins was because of cost and the fact that they weren't always that full. There's also been this whole background upheaval going on with the entire recycled market, because it used to be that essentially China would just buy all of it. And now they're saying, well, we don't want it anymore because it's not good. So that kind of is part of the back end. I mean, that's why we've seen kind of this reduction in what is allowed to go into the bins, including glass and certain plastics and the plastic bags that used to be accepted. So I think you start getting into outside of the realm of what can be reasonably done without, I mean, if money's no object, anything can be done. But for local government response anyway, I think we're starting to get outside the realm of a reasonable possibility without just, sizable increases in the portion of the budget that it occupies.
Okay, I appreciate your idea of having a private firm sign up with on this thing, And by the way, I'm sorry that I took up so much time on this relatively strange and unimportant topic, but to me it's important, because I care about the environment and I care about the way the city looks. So that's why I brought it up.
Well, I appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye, Andrew.
All right. And with that, we're definitely going to have to take that next break now. So coming out of this break, we got coming up for you on the show. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Some stop-and-go traffic remains in the East Valley on Loop 375 southbound from the Spur down to Edgemere with 7-minute delays after an earlier crash, now off to the right. Global Reach southbound is slow, 36-minute delays from Liberty Expressway down to Montana. Montana Avenue eastbound to McRae, an injury accident. And downtown El Paso Street still closed both directions, Paisano to Overland from an earlier afternoon fire. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Petco Love. Add the love of a pet at mega-texas.com. Make your holidays more merry. Adopt a pet during Petco Loves Texas Mega Adoption Event at participating animal shelters and Petco stores this weekend. Even merrier, all adoption fees are waived. Visit mega-texas.com to adopt a pet.
Help the planet with a tip from iHeartRadio Earth. Education doesn't just take place in the classroom. There are many ways for children of all ages to learn about sustainability and environmental education at home. Visit iHeartRadio.com/Earth for a list of resources, activity guides, and toolkits that are educational and fun for the whole family. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living, or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of stuff we discussed here today, and we got more coming up for you, including, of course, more discussion on some of those other big stories in our region involving El Paso Inc., some of their big stories, including reporting on the situation involving immigration, but also more on the business development things. Those are coming up for you, of course. And then even further beyond that, more visiting with our news partners there at KFOX 14 on some of the other in-depth reporting. Getting towards the end of the year, maybe a little bit more, some of the review, kind of year in review things. We'll have some of those questions coming up for y'all. So start thinking about some of the big stories, what you've thought of, getting maybe into our countdown. So you got suggestions for it, leave those in the comments in the other shows. But in the meantime, that's going to do it for us for today. So I do want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. We'll do it again tomorrow at 4 to 6 p.m. as we do every Monday through Friday. So until then, stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when you're out on the road. And have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at the Giles Road exit. It looks like a minor crash, but it's big enough to block the left lane and cause a 22-minute delay back to Piedra Street. I-10 westbound between Airway and the Patriot. It's an 8-minute delay. Still slow in the East Valley on Memorial Highway southbound from the Spur down to Edgemere with 10-minute delays from an earlier crash. And it's slow on Montana Avenue eastbound Trowbridge to Zaragoza, 15-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
You wash your hands, you brush your teeth, but what about the nose? How do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out the other nostril, flushing out allergens, mucus, and germs. And it's why cleaning your nose, the body's air filter, is the next evolution in daily personal hygiene. People try Navage for lots of reasons. Sinusitis, colds, allergies, snoring, things that make it hard to breathe through your nose. But over time, they find that cleaning their nose makes them feel better, a lot better. Over 3 million Navage users have written more than 100,000 reviews, averaging 4.7 stars, saying, best product I've ever used, and amazing, I love my Navage. Navage helps you breathe better, sleep deeper, and snore less, but the biggest payoff is improved health. Navage is good personal hygiene and can help you stay healthier. At Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Target, and online. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E. Clean nose, healthy life.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried is in custody after being arrested in the Bahamas. In a statement, the country's attorney general said the U.S. had filed unspecified criminal charges against the former crypto billionaire and was likely to request his extradition. The news comes as Bankman-Fried was expected to testify before a House committee this week. The suspect in the 1988 bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland, is back in lockup after making an appearance in a D.C. court. He faces 2 counts of destruction of an aircraft resulting in death. Victoria Cummock, who lost her then 38-year-old husband Scott in the second deadliest terror attack on the U.S., says this gives her hope.
This was the love of my life, and I had promised him that I would make sure until my dying breath that I was going to do what I could to pursue justice.
An explosion on board killed all 270 people, including 190 Americans. Dual winter storms are hitting millions of Americans. More than 15 million people in 14 states, including Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, are under some sort of winter weather alert today. Senator Joe Manchin says he respects Senator Kyrsten Sinema's decision to leave the Democratic Party. However, he isn't going to follow in her footsteps.
I'll look at all of these things. I've always looked at all those things, but I have no